The impeachment inquiry rolls on with more subpoenas and another whistleblower. White House correspondent Yamiche Alcindor begins our coverage of the day's event.
A new day, a new round of subpoenas related to the impeachment inquiry targeting President Trump. This time, the Democratic chairs of 3 House committees sent demands for documents to both the Pentagon and the White House Budget Office. They want information on President Trump's decision to withhold military aid to Ukraine. A whistleblower has accused the president of temporarily blocking millions of dollars to pressure the president of Ukraine to investigate former Vice President Joe Biden and his son Hunter.
This is a scam, and the people are wise to it.
This afternoon at the White House, President Trump sounded off.
The whistleblower report, or whatever the news was so off. It was so horrible. I said, I never said that. Almost everybody that read it said it's either perfect or really very good.
In the meantime, a second whistleblower has emerged to back up the complaint. Attorney Mark Zaid now represents both individuals. Zaid said his new client, described as another intelligence official, has been interviewed by Michael Atkinson, the intelligence community's inspector general. On Sunday, Zaid tweeted that the second whistleblower has first-hand knowledge about key events to corroborate the original complaint. Over the weekend, the Trump administration put out no one to make the president's case. But Republican Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin came to the president's defense. He chairs the Senate Homeland Security Committee.
The reason he had very legitimate concerns and reservations about Ukraine is first, corruption, generalized, it's endemic. We all know that.
The Republican chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Lindsey Graham, has vowed to expose the whistleblowers' identities if Democrats move ahead with impeachment. But nearly 90 former national security officials who served under presidents from both parties published an open letter. They insisted that whistleblowers deserve protection and anonymity. They argue that, quote, a responsible whistleblower makes all Americans safer by ensuring that serious wrongdoing can be investigated and addressed.
The Inspector General found that
still to come this week, House committees will hear from several current and former diplomats and other Trump officials in closed sessions.
And Yamiche joins me now, as well as our Capitol Hill correspondent, Lisa Desjardins. Yamiche, let's start with you over at the White House. You've been reporting on this impeachment inquiry as it continues to expand. What are you hearing and seeing among Trump allies and from the president himself?
The White House is really preparing to push back on impeachment like it's a campaign issue. So they're not treating this really as a legal issue as much as a messaging issue. So this week, Vice President Mike Pence launched a national tour where he's going to be visiting districts, one by President Trump in 2016 and then one by congressional Democrats in 2018. He's going to be basically making the case that these Republicans are going to be better for these voters, and that these voters who liked President Trump enough in 2016 are now being betrayed by Democrats because they're focusing too much on impeaching the president and not on getting through with issues like health care or other things that they've promised Democrats and other voters. So the other thing to note is that the president's campaign had a call today where they announced that they're going to make it harder for Republicans trying to challenge the president to get on the ballot in all these different states. Now, they say that this is coming not from a position of weakness, but the president essentially it's going to be easier for him not to face people on the ballot. And if you're trying to challenge President Trump, it's going to be very, very hard to get on the ballot in some of these states. The other thing to note, that Democrats are actually looking into now having the whistleblower, at least the first whistleblower, testify off campus, possibly in a shrouded way so that you can't know this person's identity either through their face or how you see them. And that's pretty unusual. But as you have the White House making their strategy, you have Democrats on the Hill essentially making their strategy.
Lisa, to you on this now, those are some extraordinary steps they're considering so they can hear from the whistleblower himself. What else are you hearing about what we should see on Capitol Hill this week?
A quick reminder, we don't know if it's a man or a woman yet, but to speak to what Yamiche is reporting, that's very important. What's going on here, Amna, is that Democrats don't trust the Republicans in Congress because they know the Republicans and the president want to know who the whistleblower is. That whistleblower is protected by law. So that's one very important thing to watch. But also, let's talk about who else is going to be on the Hill this week. There are 3 interviews. One is the counselor to Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. That's next. We'll be watching that. But the 2 big names this week right here, first of all, let's look. Gordon Sondland. He is currently the ambassador to the EU. He is a political appointee. He is actually a hotel chain owner, a big Trump donor. Then also we will hear from Marie Yovanovitch, and actually I should say privately, House lawmakers will hear from Marie Yovanovitch. She was the ambassador to Ukraine, who we understand was recalled in that position. Both of them are involved in this call. Sondland was, we know, privy to all of the machinations of this, and we saw his text messages last week. Yovanovitch has been an issue throughout all of this. Did Trump try to retaliate against her or not? It's going to be very interesting to see what they have to say behind closed doors.
Aside from the impeachment inquiry, another topic generating a lot of discussion on Capitol Hill is this thing we just talked about, right? The president's decision to withdraw U.S. forces from northern Syria. What are you hearing on Capitol Hill about this?
You know, I was making calls about, these impeachment discussions, a debate. Everyone on the Hill wanted to talk about Syria. There is really sharp concern from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle about what the president is doing. Early today, the idea that he was pulling troops all the way out. Later today, not clear exactly what he's doing. But Amna, the key point is, especially from Republicans, even some of the strongest Trump allies, they say, this makes me wonder about him as a president. I had 2 different offices tell me that. We think he's making a big mistake, and the timing is bad because of impeachment. He needs his allies there, and one office said, we're supposed to be supporting him now, but this is going the exact opposite direction on something that we feel strongly about.
Bipartisan concern there, you're seeing.
Heavy bipartisan concern, but the point is that Trump allies now are they're shaken by this decision.
Yamiche, another topic we want to make sure we get to cover a little bit. We mentioned it earlier, but there is another inquiry we should talk about. This led by the Manhattan District Attorney to get some of President Trump's tax records. What do we know about that effort?
Well, it's an extremely important case, and it gets to the heart of the fact that the president doesn't want to turn over his tax returns. He says it's because he's being audited and he doesn't want to reveal any of his tax returns while he's going through that. Critics of the president say that he doesn't want to release these tax returns because he doesn't want to show where he's getting his money from, or he doesn't want to show that he's not worth as much money as he says. What happened today was a judge essentially ordered him to release his tax returns, but then an appeals court stopped that order. So what we're seeing now is that the appeals court is going to be moving pretty fast. We might have a hearing as early as the end of this month, even October 21st. The other thing to note is that the president has really pushed hard when people have tried to get him to release his tax returns. So we should see that this is going to be something that they're going to appeal and could even end up in the Supreme Court, because the president is not going to let this go lightly.
Potentially a long court battle ahead. Yamiche Alcindor and Lisa Desjardins, thanks to you both.